19-year-old Jessie Blodgett was a sophomore at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, studying theater. She had also been offered a talent scholarship for her excellence in the musical education, program acting, musical theater, playing instruments, writing songs. Anything creative was Jessie all over and had been since she was young. She was naturally gifted, but never complacent. No one pushed herself more than she did. When she was in the first grade, the teacher had created her own curriculum for Jessie, who was miles ahead of everyone in her class. Her dad book said when other students were spelling words like and the Jessie was spelling metamorphosis. Her dream was to become a choir director, believing that music could change the world. And while she worked towards that, she also started her own business. She taught piano, voice, and violin to young people in Hartford, gaining almost 30 students in just a couple of months, as well as her studies. She volunteered every summer at the Central Middle School Orchestra, campaigned, often talked about sustainable living, environmental issues, and violence against women. She also worked all the spare hours she could to earn some extra money. July 14th, 2013 had been an exciting and busy weekend for the 19-year-old. She was playing the fiddler in Fiddler on the Roof, and it was opening weekend. Every seat had been full. The audience had loved it, and the cast had left that Sunday on a huge high. And now it was time for the cast to celebrate with a pool party in a house which had a huge llama pen outside. Jessie was filmed at the poolside and had her photo taken with the llamas. She seemed happy and smiley. But when she got back to her house alone at 1 o'clock a.m., Jessie's mom, Joy, said her daughter seemed upset. Jessie didn't say too much, but she had told her, "Oh, the guys, they're always making passes. And I don't know why they always have to turn it there." Jessie said both men were fellow cast members in their 40s, and one had tried to pull her onto his lap. She was so uncomfortable about everything she had written about it in her diary, saying in part, "Think I'm being corrupted. I think certain men are taking what should be platonic love and perverting it into a competition." She ended by saying, "I appreciate the loving support of those in my life. I will recognize problems and confront them without fear. God be with me." She then closed the book and went to bed. A few hours later, and it was 8 o'clock a.m., Jessie's mom crept into her room to put some clothes in there. Jessie was in bed and didn't stir. She had had such a busy summer working, performing, and teaching. So Joy shut the door and left for work, letting her sleep in. She returned just after noon, and the house was silent. Jessie was supposed to be giving a piano lesson, and her student knocked the door at 12:30 p.m. Joy called for her daughter, but there was no answer, so she went upstairs to her bedroom. She was completely still. Joy said her name again. No response. Her usually messy bed was totally clean, and the blanket was wrapped around her neatly. Joy walked around to the other side feeling weird. Something wasn't right. She tried to gently move her, and that's when she realized her daughter was blue. Greater than oh my God. Oh my God. Greater than Harbor 911. What's the location of your emergency? Greater than my daughter is blue. I went to wake her up, and I just got home from for lunch, and she won't wake up. Greater than okay. So, is she breathing? Greater than I don't think so. No, Jessie, she's cold. Greater than she's cold. Greater than she's cold. Oh my God, your pants are all wet and she's got it looks like strangulation marks. Greater than there are strangulation marks. Greater than that's what it looks like. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. Honey.no.no. Honey, no.no. As well as the ligature marks on her neck. There were deep abrasions on her wrists and ankles, as if she had been restrained. Jessie clearly had been strangled to death, before being positioned to make it look like she was sleeping. Her hair and clothes were soaking wet even all these hours later, and it seemed as if she had been washed after she was killed. There were no signs of a forced entry into the house or her room. No damage to the door or windows. Police found a roll of tape underneath her bed which matched the marks on her body. The tape had not been in the Blitt house, so had to have been bought there by her killer. It appeared that she had been killed sometime around 9 a.m. This was someone that knew the house, knew the family's schedules, and knew that Jessie would be asleep at that time. The fact they had waited around to stage the scene and wash her added more weight to this, not being a random intruder. One investigator said that before Jessie's murder, the small town of Hartford in Wisconsin hadn't seen a homicide in almost 30 years. Book, Jessie's dad said, "I think it's as safe as it gets. There were 2 murders in Hartford in the 100 years before we moved. Jessie was the third, as scared as everyone was." Police said they felt the public was not in danger and there was no threat to the community. Greater than 12 News' Christina Palladino is live in Hartford tonight. And Christina, police gave an update on the investigation, but it's providing little comfort. Greater than yeah. The latest from the Hartford Police Department here tonight is an email that we got on our phones earlier today. They had no updates on the investigation, but they did want to stress the community there is no threat here in the Hartford area. Now, I spoke with several of Jessie Blodgett's friends tonight. They tell me she had no enemies, and they are trying to understand how this could have happened to her. Music showing off her piano-playing skills with her close pals was music something Jessie Blodgett and this group of friends used to always do. But the last week and a half has been devastating to get through. They're in disbelief of Jessie's murder and they're sticking close together. Greater than she definitely made whoever she was talking to feel like they were the only person in the room. Greater than Jacqueline was one of Jessie's best friends growing up together in Hartford. In fact, Jessie's parents asked her to paint this portrait of Jessie for her funeral. Jacqueline tells me she stayed up all night to do it. Greater than I wanted to paint her. I've always wanted to paint her. So it was definitely a work of love. Jacqueline and her friends say learning of Jessie's murder was shocking. The 19-year-old was found dead in her bed by her mother more than a week ago with strangulation marks to her neck. She had come home from a cast party for the local production of Fiddler on the Roof hours before. Police have only said they are in the process of an active investigation, and that the public is not in danger. Jeremy Zellman is another friend from Hartford and studied music with Jessie at Milwaukee. "I was just sort of in denial, I think. I mean, just 'cause I can't imagine anybody who would wish anything ill against Jessie." And according to court documents, police have interviewed at least one person of interest. Several search warrants were returned yesterday, but they have now been sealed. An autopsy on Jessie was completed, but it's not being released at this time. We're live at the Hartford Police Department. Christina Palladino, WISN 12 News. Investigators did interview the men from the cast party that Jessie had told her mom about. The 46-year-old that had pulled her onto his lap denied any involvement and said his girlfriend would be really upset if she knew about how he behaved. Authorities filed warrants to search both his and Jessie's cell phone records. They also requested Jessie's Facebook data. However, both men's phones put them well away from Jessie's house that morning, so they were ruled out. They spoke to people at her work, too, but again, everyone there was cleared. While this investigation was going on in Hartford, authorities in nearby Richfield were looking into an attack on a woman in a park. This had happened just days before Jessie was found. Melissa had been out walking her dog when she was attacked from behind by a man holding a knife. She bravely grabbed the blade and fought him off, and he hastily drove away in his van. Melissa needed 15 stitches. Once out of hospital, she was ready to show detectives everything. She could give a really good description of her attacker, his vehicle, and what had happened in the park. She took the officers around the crime scene, describing everything from his face and build to where he had been parked. A greater than white male, 18 to 20 years of age, 6'12" to 110 pounds. Greater than yet. Greater than he had light blonde hair with very fair skin. Greater than yes. Greater than okay. And you said he had checkered shorts. Greater than plaid shorts. Dark blue minivan. Dodge Caravan. I don't know what year. An older model, though. The detective said she was the best witness he had ever interviewed. She could tell him absolutely everything so clearly. The vehicle she spoke about had sounded familiar to one officer who regularly patrolled the park. He had spotted it in the parking lot several weeks before, and something about it had felt strange. So he ran the number plates, but it didn't turn up anything suspicious, so he moved on. Now, he knew his gut had been music right, and he had to track it down. The vehicle was linked to a couple in their 40s, and neither fit the description of Melissa's attacker. Their son, however, 19-year-old Daniel Bartle did. Police called him, and he said he would come into the station. Interestingly, he didn't want to even ask what they wanted to talk to him about. And where was he when he got the call from police? Jessie's house at a memorial, consoling her parents and crying with her friends as they all shared memories of the 19-year-old. Daniel Bartle was actually Jessie's ex-boyfriend. He had been very vocal at the house, with one friend, Jackie, saying, in fact, he had been doing most of the talking that day. Books said Daniel had always been around and in the picture. The pair had sat next to each other every day in high school. They dated for several months, and with so much in common, their relationship just made a lot of sense to everyone. Both were theater kids, both played instruments, and wrote music together. They even recorded a song together just 2 months before she was killed, and she posted it to her YouTube channel. Music I can swing, music you so hard. Let's just music feel. Greater Than Daniel ended things romantically, but the teens had remained friends. Daniel's parents said he had dropped out of college after one semester, and when he returned home, the once jokey, playful, outgoing teen had seemed depressed, subdued, and not his usual self. When Jessie heard he had quit, she was concerned. He was a straight-A student, keen for college, and always had been. So what was going on with him? But now Daniel was home, and he was back in the same friendship group, and he and Jessie were seeing more and more of each other again. Before long, it was common knowledge among everyone that although Daniel had been the one to end things, he now wanted to rekindle it. But Jessie was happy being single. They were good as friends. But as police sat down with him to ask him about Melissa, they did not yet know any of this about his connection to music. Jessie. In his interviews, he was quiet for long periods of time and wasn't really giving them anything. Detective Joel Clausing asked him to run them through his day on the Friday Melissa was attacked, but he said he couldn't remember any of the specifics. Greater than you were off this, right? Right. Yes. This happened at a park, and if you have any knowledge about what this is, just tell me how. Greater than yes. Greater than what kind of vehicle do you have? Greater than I drive my parents a Caravan. Greater than he had some marks on his hands and arms, but said it had come from working a shift. Police gave him another chance to tell the truth, and he admitted he had actually lost his job a while ago. Well, then the marks didn't come from that then, did they? Again, Daniel was silent. He was getting himself caught in lie after lie. And finally, he had to admit what detectives already knew. Greater than, and you were in your van, correct? Or your mom's van or your gift? You went after that girl, right? Greater than he had attacked Melissa and gave a bizarre motivation for it. I wanted to scare someone because everyone else is so confident. I don't understand it. I need someone to be like me, he said. Detective Clausing said he was clearly very intelligent and very self-aware, but he just made his skin crawl. He was placed under arrest for attacking Melissa, but the interviews were far from over. And this was where everything started to fall into place with Jessie's case as well. Detectives asked him where he had been all day, and he told them he was at the Blodgett house. They did a double take. Sorry to hear that, they said. Were you close? Daniel hung his head and said he couldn't believe that someone had raped and murdered her. At that point, Jessie's body was still being examined. No one, including detectives, had any idea she had been raped. This would turn out to be true. She had been sexually assaulted. Daniel Bartle had just given himself away. When Daniel had been called in from Jessie's house, no one thought anything of it, and no one knew about Melissa's case at this point. They assumed it was a routine thing as they worked through Jessie's circles. Joy had even turned to him and said, "Don't worry, Dan, it'll be okay. They're going to want to talk to all of Jessie's friends." Daniel turned to his friends and said, "Okay, maybe you can come and pick me up in 30 minutes. He was very confident he would not be there long. But when his friends turned up to get him, officers were waiting outside. "We can't release Dan. He's being detained," they said. Impossible, everyone thought. Surely there had to be a mistake. New at 10. Hundreds gathered tonight to mourn the loss of a murdered Hartford teenager. Music 19-year-old Jessie Blodgett. The entire community paid tribute to Jessie's life at West Side Park. I will see you again. Singing greater than I am Nick Burr in Hartford, where police here have announced an arrest in the murder 2 weeks ago of 19-year-old Jessie Blodgett. The local actress was found strangled to death in her home here in Hartford. A 19-year-old who bear this man has been arrested. Police, though, are not giving any additional information as to who he is. Although I have spoken with the district attorney, he tells me he expects to file charges and the suspect will be in court tomorrow on Wednesday. Greater than Jessie's dad, Book, said it's not Dan. He's never been in any trouble at school or the law that we know of. Jessie and Dan sit together at school. He was a straight A student. They would write songs together, sing together. He was welcome in our home. He was just over the day after Jessie's murder, sharing hugs and memories and tears with us. Now officially in custody, he was interviewed again, this time as a person of interest in Jessie's case. Daniel admitted to being in Jessie's home in the weeks before she was killed, but he had kept it all quiet. He claimed Jessie had tried to be romantic with him, but as he was in a new relationship, he didn't want to admit this. Naturally, police were very skeptical. Daniel told them that on the day of her murder, he had been driving around in his parents' car as he was still pretending to have a job. He then stopped at a park and sure enough, he was captured on surveillance footage there. So, police headed right out to look. Fortunately, the bins he was seen walking around were still filled with whatever he had dumped in there. And pulling everything out, police found a huge amount of very damning evidence. A cereal box stuffed with ropes alongside bloody tissues and the same tape used to bind Jessie. Music, a search of his house and room turned up more rope and tape. Both Daniel and Jessie's DNA was found on everything alongside his DNA under her fingernails and the presence of DNA that proved he had raped her. His laptop showed various searches that got more disturbing as they went on. Serial killers by numbers of victims, spree killers, snuff films, and strangulation cases. One video showed a woman being raped, strangled, washed, and put into bed. Exactly what they now knew had happened to Jessie. Music detective Clausing said there was really no way to describe how vile and brutal some of these videos were. They also found parts of what seemed to be a novel titled Red is Red by Joseph Bartle. Joseph was Daniel's middle name. Parts of the novel focused on someone called Jessica and another character called Dee beating someone into a coma using a pillowcase filled with Lego bricks. It was a case as clear-cut as they come, and Daniel was charged with 4 felony counts, including 1 count of first-degree intentional homicide in Jessie's case. The other 3 charges related to the attack on Melissa. In total, it was 1 count of first-degree intentional homicide, 1 count of first-degree recklessly endangering safety, and 1 count of false imprisonment. Timing-wise, it seemed that Daniel had entered the house around 9 a.m. after Joy and Book had left for work. He knew the family's schedule, knew his way around, and knew Jessie would be home alone. He brought everything along with him, something which the prosecution would later coin his murder kit. Now, all the evidence in Jessie's body had been analyzed. They knew once Daniel was in her room, he had hogtied and gagged her, wrapping tape around her face so the gag wouldn't come out. He then raped and strangled her to death with a rope. He washed her, tried to clean her up, and then put her back into bed like she was asleep. Daniel was someone that not a soul had suspected. He had mourned alongside Jessie's loved ones, gave support to her grieving family, shared the sadness with her friends. Book recalled that about a week before she was killed, Jessie and Daniel had been at their home alone just playing music. When Joy got home, Daniel had turned to Jessie and said, "What's your mom doing back so early?" At the time, it had struck Joy as a bit weird. Looking back, they think this was perhaps when he first wanted to hurt Jessie, but his plan had fallen through. Daniel was still denying everything and pleaded not guilty. So, everyone had to sit through a tough trial. Greater than New at 6 opening statement started today in Daniel Bartel's murder trial. Greater than Jessie Blodgett's mom was the first person to take the stand in this trial. Greater than when you would see Dan at the house on those 3 occasions, did Jessie and Dan appear to enjoy each other's company and then be having a good time making music? Greater than MHM, greater than yes, greater than yes. When I entered the bedroom, I observed on a female I later identified as the mother. Joy, I'm doing CPR on another female body. Greater than police shot video of Jessie's room that day. The Blitz held each other close as prosecutors showed it in court. We won't show it here, but it included video of Jessie's body and the marks around her neck. The defense fought hard, however, but lost. Correct. I didn't think it as being offered for the purposes of exciting the passions of the jury, but rather for the purpose of assisting the jury in understanding the crime scene. A detective took the stand for the second day in a row to talk about a video found on Bartle's laptop. It's called Poor Girl Raped and Strangled to Death. Investigators also thought it was telling that on the day Jessie died, it appears Bartle tried to delete a video of Jessie from his computer. It's called Jessie's Song. Greater than, did you find anything with regard to Jessie's song? Greater than, yes, it was in unallocated clusters. And what was in there? Greater than, the song file was sitting within the deleted files. Assistant District Attorney Sandra Gurnath shows the juror as evidence found at a nearby park where she says Bartle went after the alleged struggle and homicide took place. Bartell's defense calls it circumstantial evidence. These pieces of evidence alone are not sufficient. There are other reasonable explanations for those. The prosecution is trying to link it to Bartell. In Hartford, Ben Hutcherson, WISN to News. Greater than, Jessie's family, as classy as ever, said they did not want to respond to him with hate. Jessie's family and Daniel's family were supporting each other. The Bludgers recognized that 2 children had been lost. Now, Buck said, our first reaction wasn't, we hate this kid. It was, oh my God, what happened to Dan? There was so much evidence, even his lawyers couldn't really argue or give an alternative theory. It was just undeniable. I don't believe that you have heard in the last 6-7 days any testimony that would give you reason to believe that Dan Bartle had any motive to cause the death of Jessie Blodgett. We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Bartle guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in the information. Well, Mike, while that guilty verdict came as no surprise to many people, it didn't make it any less emotional in the court. Families from both sides tell me tonight their hearts are heavy. It's not a good day for anybody. That's how the father of Jessie Blodgett describes the verdict after a heartbreaking trial. Daniel Bartle was charged in the murder of his 19-year-old friend last summer. The guilty verdict coming after just 3 hours of deliberations. But Lodge spoke briefly as he left the courtroom fighting back tears. Nobody won. Dan's family is a beautiful family who provided a loving environment. They're great people. I feel horrible for them today. Greater than, including his DNA. Greater than, Jessie screaming to us. She's screaming to us. She's telling us a story. His DNA is all under her fingernails, under on her left hand, on her right hand. Greater than, defense attorney Gary Schmelaus argued evidence may have been contaminated and the state hadn't proved its case. Schmemel called this case a tragedy for both sides. I just have compassion for both the Blodgett family and the Bartell family for the very, very difficult ordeal that they've been through. It took the jury just 3 hours to find Daniel guilty of first-degree intentional homicide. He was given life without the possibility of parole. For Melissa's attack, he got a 5-year prison sentence plus 5 years supervision, a sentence which was heavily criticized. Now it was time to hear from the now 20-year-old, and Joy and Buck were really hoping for some honesty. Daniel calmly turned to them and said, greater than Buck, Joy, I can't give you the answers that you're looking for. You say how you count the days and the hours, and I do, too. I have every day. There's no hiding from yourself in a tiny concrete cell. I have a disgustingly innate ability to lie to myself that I have exercised far too many times in my life, but I refuse to hurt someone other than myself by doing that. This jumpsuit that I'm wearing, these shackles that I'm put in, don't make me guilty. And I know there is evidence that I can't refute that would make you believe that I am guilty. I know that you feel I may have enjoyed how painful this process was for some of you. And at my worst, I've had that quality. I've made terrible mistakes along that line. But the only reason that I went to trial at all is because I was told I would not be allowed to make an Alfred plea. To acknowledge that I couldn't refute the evidence and just accept sentencing without saying that I'd done something I hadn't. If I could have done that, I wouldn't have put any of you through this or my family. Judge Martins, I snorts for what you represent. I'm not trying to be combative. But I don't snorts know whether I should fear you or love with you. I struggle snorts to understand cough someone who has that any human should be given the ability to condemn his fellow man. Snorts, but I do know that I pity you. I don't blame you for any of this. I think you've been snorts extremely fair given what you have to work with. I can't prove that I'm innocent snorts to anyone, not even myself. I can't prove that snorts Jessie was a beautiful person, though she was, and I still remember her. I can't prove that a sun that I haven't seen for over 400 days still even rises and sets. But I like to believe that it does. Buck, again, snorts, I think it's incredible that such ugliness has begotten such beauty. And I've seen that from your entire family. I saw that the day after Jessie died when I was with you. Snorts, I pray for you, for all of you. And I hope that I believe that someday I will be snorts before a court that will know that my conscience is grieved. I love you, and I'm so sorry for your loss. Book addressed Daniel and said, Dan, I forgive you as I have every day since I learned it was you. I believe there is good and bad in every one of us. So, I do not demonize or vilify you to the good in you. And there is, I say this, you are forgiven. But you will not know forgiveness until you tell the truth. For 457 days, you have lived a lie. As long as you are alive, you still have a chance to own what you did. I hope you take that chance. As for Jess, she is now happy and free. Dan, I don't think there is in any way on God's green earth that you or many in this room will understand or believe this, but it's true. I forgive you and I love you. Of course, I hate what you did, but that doesn't mean I can't forgive and love. Daniel Bartle appealed his verdict in the Wisconsin Supreme Court, arguing that the police used statements he made without a lawyer present, which he said was a violation of his constitutional rights. But the court rejected this. A month after Jessie's murder, 500 people showed up for a vigil. And this was where the Love is Greater Than Hate Project was born, a nonprofit whose mission is to end violence against girls and women, something that Jessie's parents pour everything into in the hopes to turn a tragedy into something that can change lives and save them. The mission reads, ending interpersonal violence, promoting forgiveness, presencing love. Greater than one look in her eye told me that all hope was gone and Jessie was gone, too. Greater than that's the moment Buck Blad's life changed. A simple exchange with his wife the day his daughter was killed in July of 2013. Now he shares their heartbreak with others. When this happened to Jess, I started self-educating, and I had no idea how prevalent this is and how violent it often is. Greater than her family started the Love is Greater Than Hate Project. People were just pouring out their hearts to us. It was unbelievable, indescribable, and it's still going on 15 months later. It's crazy. Greater than the goal is to talk to schools and groups of people, urging them to take a pledge against male on female violence. The community is rallying together. Out here in the lobby, they're selling these t-shirts and they're hoping that for everyone that's sold, the message spreads a little bit further. Greater than, every day when I'm not on purpose, I'm in pain. And when I'm doing something and talking about love and in forgiveness, then I'm good. Greater than Annie hopes by sharing Jessie's story, other families won't have to go through a similar pain. Greater than Buck said something about his daughter that would later become his mission. Greater than this has been a devastating blow. But honey, your strength is in me, too, and love will always be stronger than hate. I forgive him every single day, and I as it as an ongoing practice because I get mad, and I think about Jess, and I think about what you went through. And it was brutal. Music was her passion, but just before she was murdered, male-on-female violence had become Jessie's cause. They go into schools, colleges, and prisons and share their story, which they hope will educate people, inspire people, motivate, and ultimately choose love over everything. We are a message organization, not a service organization. The message is simple: end interpersonal violence through love and forgiveness. Book said his daughter campaigned a lot, so this is fitting. Her last big cause in life was male violence against women. He said she was just fiercely outspoken about that for a year or two before her death. She was a really brave young woman, and she had a lot of cousins. Ironically, Her last and biggest cause was violence against women, and she tried to tell me about it. I listened, but I didn't get it until it happened to her. At Daniel's sentencing, Book had been given just a few minutes, but spoke some powerful words, some of which we wanted to end today's episode on. 10 minutes. 10 minutes to sum up a life and explain in words to others the impact that the loss of that life has had on me. I should be able to shout out to the world daily until life leaves my body who this beautiful young person was, what she stood for, how deeply she touched so very many, and how she has left behind a powerful legacy of love. Well, I intend to. In the weeks following her taking, we received over 1,000 cards and letters. Never again will I end a long, hard, stressful day at work with a walk around the block with my girl, talking freely and deeply about everything under the sun. In her final month, she had developed a habit of starting every one of those walks with, "So, how was your day, Dad?" How can I describe for you the pain of this loss? I can't. It is there in the background and often in the foreground of my life every second. It will never go away. Others tell me that I will adapt to it, learn to function well with it, which I already have. But it will remain there and never go away. I know they are right.